Hi, this video shows how I built a garden pond in my back garden. I live in the city of Galway on the west coast of Ireland. The reason for building the pond is that I hope that it will attract and sustain wildlife like damselflies, dragonflies and beetles, as well as acting as a water source or watering hole for existing wildlife visitors. Mainly birds, but hopefully also hedgehogs, frogs, any other critters that might wander by. My garden is a typical city garden, so the pond couldn't be that big, but even so, a small backyard pond in the city should provide an oasis for the local wildlife. That's my hope anyway. I should emphasise, this is not an instructional video. I know how to dig a hole, but that's about the height of my technical abilities. I would really recommend watching Joel Ashton's videos on YouTube. He's got tons of great content on his channel about all aspects of supporting wildlife in his garden, and specifically on building ponds. I binge watched a bunch of his videos over the Christmas before starting my own project. Found them very useful. A lot of the techniques I used for my own pond are based on ideas I got from watching his videos. I'll post a link to his channel in this video. Digging a big hole in late December isn't that much crack. There isn't a huge amount of daylight, so you've got very short days, and it tends to be very cold. The first step is to dig the hole. I'd laid out a garden hose in the rough shape of the pond, as you can see. It's a good way for figuring out the footprint of the pond, and in particular how much space it's actually going to take up and where the boundaries of the pond will end up. I'd originally intended to make a bigger pond, but discovered too late that I wasn't able to order a pond liner in the size that I wanted. So in the end I used the only pond liner that I could buy at Christmas, which was a 5.5 by 4 meter wide liner from B&Q. So that's what I went with in the end. The idea is to create different depths or steps, with the deepest part of the pond at least 0.5 meter deep. I think I ended up with about 70 centimeters in the end. The clay in the back garden is a heavy grey soil. It's actually impervious to water, so it's a bit ironic to have to dig it out in order to make space for a plastic liner to hold water. To protect the pond liner from punctures, I put down a layer of material which is normally used for suppressing weeds, followed by a layer of foam to stop any stones or sharp objects piercing the liner. I was anxious to get the waterproof layer down before Christmas Day because I was going away for a couple of days over the Christmas and heavy rain was forecast, and obviously the rain would help fill the pond. When I got back after Christmas, I could see that the rain had filled the deepest part of the pond. At the bottom of that pond, I had laid large stones to act as hiding places for small insects. I then finished off the protective layer on top of the liner, which is the same as the layers below it. Protective foam layer followed by a black plastic layer on which I was going to lay the stones, soil and gravel. The geology of this part of Galway is granite. That meant I ended up unearthing quite a large number of very big granite rocks. Now they look great, and I was able to use them to hold the liner in place and help with the landscape of the side of the pond, but they weren't much fun to lift out of the hole. I had an idea of making a small island in the middle of the pond so that birds and insects could use it to drink or rest in safety, or in the case of insects, just bask in the sunshine. I decided to use a couple of ceramic pots, one inside the other, to make the island. The tricky bit, of course, was sliding the smaller pot inside the large one because there wasn't much space between them, and to try and avoid either catching my fingers or getting a squirt of water into the face when dropping it into place. I wasn't successful in avoiding either of those. I created a mini pond last year, which was really only about 30 centimetres deep of water. And it just consisted of a small pond liner that was propped up around the edges. But I had bought a few water plants for that pond, so I was able to reuse those in my new pond. I had a couple of barrels of rainwater that filled from the gutter, and I was able to use that water to fill the pond further. Along with that, I used the water from the mini pond, and I actually used my power washer to pump the water from the mini pond to the main pond. I also finished shaping the pond with stones and putting the last of the plants that I had available in place around the edges. A couple of weeks later, I happened to visit my local garden centre, Dangan Nurseries, and discovered that they actually had a lot of water plants in stock. So I added some lilies to the deepest part of the pond, and have also planted some border plants. I'd already placed a few pots in the water as placeholders, so I used those too for the plantings. Even though I recorded this in January, there's some growth already apparent. One of the plants I brought back from Dangan Nurseries has begun to flower, and some of the small plants that I brought from the other pond have taken root and begun to prosper. So that's it. I hope to add more soil and plants around the borders of the pond in the coming months when there's more growth and warmth. Right now there's a lot of gravel. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope it inspires you to perhaps do something similar in your own garden. As I said, this was my first attempt at creating a backyard pond, and I want to say a big thanks to Joel Ashton and his YouTube channel, because I used his videos and instructions to do the design for my one. Okay, bye for now.